kicking everybody. We are back for another episode of Pickin Fight after a slight hiatus. We're back for a good card though. How you doing, Tom?
I'm doing well. I feel like every other time we sign on, it's like, oh, back after a slight hiatus. Now we're back after a slight hiatus. But it is that time of the year where there's not a card every single week, and they're gearing up for a strong. They're trying to compile all of the really good fights around the numbered cards, make those final numbers to impress ESPN and get the big money deal for the future. So I guess I understand it from a business perspective, but it does leave us in a precarious situation where there's not a ton of things to talk about, but there has been a ton of UFC rumors this past weekend, all the back and forth about Ian Gary and the MMA Guru starting some stuff. Ian Gary, of course, we had said this about his wife, his manager. And that she kind of controls his life, and it's weird that he has her last name. And he said initially that he did it so that his child didn't feel weird, but then you come to find out that the child's father and ex-husband of his now wife is his nutritionist. He says now that he did that so that the guy could see his kid all the time. There's reports
they live together.
There's reports of that. Apparently, she denied that, so I don't know what side to believe on that. That's up for dispute. I guess you could use the term "live together" very liberally and say, no, he has his own house, but he could spend all the time there, so it's as if he lives there. I don't really know, but also, you have the whole WAG thing that, she wrote a book on how to be a WAG, and into basically it's a European term. I've never heard of it before, but be a wife and girlfriend, go capture and, Dracula-rize these young athletes so that you can basically ride their coattails to fame and success. She apparently wrote a book about that. She alleges it was a pamphlet and a joke that she had written when she was at OK Magazine or something of the sort, and that it's being taken out of context. Of course, everything is being taken out of context. It was just funny that this all started because, and then I'll pass it over to you, but it was funny that it all started because Ian Gary said in a video leading up to the fights that, a certain bearded, fat wanker on MMA YouTube. And, well, unless it's you.
I have made mention of the fact that taking her last name was weird to begin with.
Yeah, so how about that? In fact, he wasn't talking about Guru. Yeah, he was talking about you, with actually, which is even funnier too, because listen, you're a big stocky guy. I wouldn't describe you as fat at all. Apparently Guru was saying the same thing about himself. He's a big stocky dude and he's not fat. No one's ever really seen him, about collarbone down. So hard to say. Apparently he's going to make I haven't watched his videos close enough to know, but he's going to make some appearance where you see him. He's like, you're going to be surprised. I'm a stocky dude. So either way, off basis with the fat comment.
It's funny because I always pictured him as being 5'4" and just massive, but
no, apparently he's 6'4", 6'3". He's a big dude.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I tend to believe the evidence is there. I believe what guys like Sean Strickland are saying and MMA Guru about this whole situation, and the fact that Ian Gary said that himself and was projecting that almost. It's an odd scenario. The girl wrote a book about how to do what everybody's saying she's doing, and how to, she's an older lady and latches herself onto a young athlete, wrote a whole pamphlet or book about it that had one review on Amazon for 5 stars. So that was probably a review she left herself. But
apparently Americans just don't get UK humor. Right. I forgot. It's our fault that we don't find you funny.
No, I mean, I like Ricky Gervais, and
of course but that's what I'm saying. It's not UK humor. It's you're not funny.
Yeah, no, or she meant it seriously and has done that. It's just an odd scenario overall. Ian Gary's a bit of an odd guy. He's just super cringe, and lines up if you're cringe, you just keep being cringe, right? I even hate that word cringe, but saying it is cringe. But Henry Cejudo is a guy. He's a perfect example. He just continues to be a fucking weirdo, and Ian Gary continues to be a weirdo as well.
Yeah, Aljo you can throw in there as well.
Yeah, it's if you're a little weird, you're probably all the way weird.
I would say that what do you call it? Is actually a really genuine way of being a weird guy. Chito Vera. I think like he's
Oh yeah.
a different dude, but he wears it. He's genuine and he makes it cool. Whereas some of these other guys are like trying to be different, and it's so disingenuous and it's not cool, and it doesn't play for them well.
No, you're absolutely right, and I agree with you about Cheeto. Cheeto does not try to be like the guy that he is. I think it's just like who he is. He grew up in a surf town in Ecuador, takes mushrooms, hangs out with Action Bronson. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
who he is. Like I don't think he's weird at all. I just think he's just
Mm-hmm.
like the like
He's different. He's cool though. You
yeah.
know what I mean? Sean O'Malley. He's different. He's weird, but he wears it well because
Yeah.
it's genuine. It's him. He's unapologetic. It's the guys like Ian Gary, who's like weird and like I guess he's getting a confidence about him, but it also feels like he's playing a character. I don't know. He has been getting better. Like I remember his first initial burst onto the scene. We were like, oh, this guy's so cringe. It's difficult, but he's
Yeah.
growing into himself a little bit.
No, I don't know. I mean, I think O'Malley's a little weird in his own way too. But like he has like a similar situation going on, but it's just it's all odd.
Mm-hmm.
If you're gonna be a public figure, you have to accept, and this is all it comes down to. You could do whatever you want in your private life, but if you're gonna make yourself a public figure and really go all the way public in the way that Ian Gary does for like vlogs and stuff like that, or the way that Sean O'Malley does going on podcasts and talking about your personal life, you have to accept that people are going to criticize your personal life. Like everybody does their own thing behind closed doors. If you want it to stay behind closed doors, keep it behind closed doors. Don't make it a public thing. And that's
Also, if your wife is 40 years old, you take her last name and her ex-husband is your nutritionist, and she wrote a book on how to be a wag, and you specifically call out in the video, if I thought you were a wag, you can't get upset when people start asking questions.
no,
That's
yeah,
just a simple fact. Like,
it goes for anybody. And these guys are like, we're not at a point in MMA where like you're out being harassed by the paparazzi. Like these guys are still in terms of like athlete popularity worldwide and people that get harassed, like LeBron James type shit. We're not there yet. So if they're making their personal life public like that, it's on them. And that's, if anything, it's on Ian Gary. That's what it really comes down to. It's on those guys themselves. They're putting all their information out there. Nobody would have known that Sean O'Malley was in a open relationship if he didn't put that out there. And nobody.
well, people may have found out if he's claiming a wife, and then they see him out or her out or something like that. People may have found out. It might be better to get in front of that one.
Yeah, I don't know. Look at Connor.
True. Good point.
It's some things are better left unsaid.
Good point.
Anyways, we got a good card ahead of us. I like listen, my favorite thing that has happened in the MMA world in the past like couple of days, 24 hours, whatever. I just saw it on Instagram right before we popped on. Sean Strickland thought somebody was breaking into his car and walked out to it like a serial killer. You see the whole thing on his ring camera feed, and he walks out to the guy like a serial killer, and he's like, "What are you doing?" He goes like, I'm sorry. And then the video cuts out, which either leads me to believe that Sean Strickland took him inside and fucking killed him or something, or let the guy go. According to his caption, he let the guy go, but the video cuts off as soon as he gets up to the guy. So it leads you to believe like anything could have happened. It's like the ending of Birdman. It's like very ambiguous, You don't know. Did he live? Yeah, did he live or die? You don't know. So
Sean Strickland is captivating. Fucking captivating, if nothing else. I mean, him jumping in and talking about the Ian Gary thing, this, he always finds a way to stay in the news and keep your eyes on him, which, attached to him is the UFC middleweight championship. And in that title is UFC. If people are talking about him, they're talking about the UFC, and they've already established there's no such thing as bad press. So, hey, good for him for hyping up his next fight in the UFC. They should be very happy with what he's doing right now.
Yeah, and not to mention the fact that the guy that he's fighting is also pretty good at garnering attention as well.
Mm-hmm.
The next, because that's what, 2 pay-per-views away. We have this one with Colby and Leon coming up, and then we have Dricus versus Sean coming up. And, I think that those are going to sell well. I think Sean Strickland versus Dricus is that's like a deep cut for the fans. Although, I don't know, Sean Strickland is gaining popularity outside
He's getting mainstream popularity now.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's popularity, but you could say notoriety.
Yeah, notoriety, but hey, all press is good press in this business. It's you want to sell fights, that's what you need. And everybody saw what he did to Izzy, and basically retired Izzy for a couple of years, according to his timeline.
Hmm. Right.
So, all good things coming from Sean Strickland down the horizon. I love the friendship with Nina. What's her face? The
Whatever. Yeah.
yeah, whatever her name is,
I
but
think she has two last names. I'm not going to attempt at remembering it because I'm probably going to be wrong
yeah, well,
or saying wrong or
yeah,
some variation of that.
Tom Aspinall crossed the line with her a couple of days ago, but
No, but and she was coming to his defense.
yeah,
That the whole point was like he feels that her questions are provocative and trying to elicit a reaction. So he
right.
asked the same thing, and she wasn't offended. So the fact that other people are, shut the fuck up.
Yeah, yeah, no, of course, I agree. She's asked Aljo if he like shits in the shower or something before. That was
Hmm.
very funny. But let's dive into this card. We got a good one coming up. Where is this one taking place? Is this one in Austin?
Yeah, at the Moody Center,
Yeah, that's
UFC
dope.
Fight Night, Austin.
The one that we're really missing out on, unfortunately, on this card. Dan Hooker was supposed to fight Bobby Green. He had to pull out of this fight due to injury. I think that would have been a really fun fight. But instead, we got Jalen Turner. We'll talk about that one in a little bit. But I just want to touch on one prelim fight, and the odds, are not great if you're going to bet straight up. I like the guy by knockout. He's a minus 410, great parlay piece, and that is Rodolfo Bellato over Ihor Poteria. Ihor Poteria, he came into the UFC off of the Contender Series, had a win there, a solid TKO win, was doing well in like regional scenes, and then he came in and fought Nikolai Negamariano, who is like middling out. Nikolai has had like wars with guys like Kennedy Nizichekwu before, and Negamariano, he's good, but if you're trying to climb your way up in this light heavyweight division, you can't be getting knocked out by him in your debut. He did beat Shogun Hua after that and was massively disrespectful with his celebration. It was like a 4-night emote. It was super. You want to talk about cringe? That was cringe. I'm sure you
I
remember that.
remember that. Mm-hmm.
And then he got knocked out by Carlos Olberg. The guy he's fighting, Rodolfo Bellato, is in ways he is similar to Carlos Olberg. He's in your face type of guy, very strong, just like dense muscle, packs a lot of power for this light heavyweight division. Really like in your face, nasty striker. He did try to get into the UFC once before, lost in the Contender Series. His most recent fight was a win in the Contender Series, a knockout that's prompted Dana White to give him a contract. And it just goes to show the improvements that the guy's made since then. He went on a 2-fight win streak in the LFA and was invited back to the Contender Series. Both of his LFA fights were really good. Just showed really good striking in your face, nasty, nasty hooks. So I'm going with Rodolfo Bellato over Ihor Poteria. I'm still salty about that celebration after he beat Shogun Hua, one of the all-time greats. He was so disrespectful to the guy. So no matter what he had to say after, just so nasty. That'll be his only win in the UFC, I think, was over an aging, and I think it was Shogun's last fight. That'll be his only win in the UFC. I think he's going to get knocked out by Rodolfo Bellato this week. You with me on that one, Tom?
Yeah, I think it's a really good pick. I mean, he's minus 410. There's not a lot to say about Ihor Poteria. He had the win over a very aging, very old Mauricio Shogun Hua. And like you said, disrespectful. He, I think, went on to walk that back and say that was just a celebration of his and not necessarily indicative of his opponent or whatever. Bad look regardless, especially with a legend. 20-4 coming out of Ukraine. A lot of experience in the cage, but not a high level of competition in those fights. And he shows it, that he a lot of times can leave his hands down, and he's just a little bit wild of a fighter. Where I think Rodolfo Bellato, a guy with a lot of power, something that Mauricio Shogun Hua didn't possess at that point in his career, a lot of power. And throwing quick hook shots, potentially when you have your hand down, trying and catching a guy right before he hits you, or even right after you take a hit from him. Bellato was a guy to be able to get in there quickly, deliver a power shot, especially a hook to a dropped guard of Ihor Poteria. And I see this one ending quickly for him. So, minus 410, heavy favorite, TKO, I think potentially in the first or the second round. Add that to a parlay, and I think you can get a little extra money there. So I'm agreeing with you. A long way of saying that.
Nice. All right. You want to lead us off on the main card? What do we got first?
Yeah, let's start off with the main card. Starting off on the main card, we have Punahele Soriano taking on Dustin Stoltzfus. Stoltzfus is coming in at a plus 230 underdog. He is 1-4 over his last 5, those being to Kyle Dawkins by decision, Adolfo Vieira by submission, Gerald Meerschaert GM3, the miss that is, also by submission, Vieira naked choke at both times. He beat Dwight Grant, who hasn't gone on to do, a ton inside of the UFC, also another middling fighter. And then he had most recently, it's still hard to say recent, a knockout loss from Abus Magomedov. Looking at his opponent, Punahele Soriano, 5'11", 72.5-inch reach. He's going to have about a 2.5-inch reach disadvantage coming out of Extreme Couture. They're about the same age. Fighting out of Hawaii is Puna Soriano. I had been a guy who had said, a number of times, I think, on this podcast that he had been called Pillow Hands Punahele. Pillow Hands Puna. I think you had a couple of times went, back against me on that, saying, no, he definitely has a knockout power. And, he knocked out Dalcha Leon Gambula, which didn't end up actually being all that difficult. Dalcha is a huge guy who dropped a lot of weight, even to get down to 85. So I think, that ended up not being an accurate representation of Punahele's power. And you look at the other three, a decision loss to Brendan Allen, which actually aged pretty well. Brendan Allen up towards the top of the division. But a decision loss against Nick Maximov, which didn't age too well. He has that win, and then he lost to Roman Kopylov, which, again, not a bad loss. These guys, are half decent, top 10, upper echelon level of the division. But Punahele Soriano, not a guy who's going to come in there, one shot, knock you out. He does have some power, especially after accumulation, but he just, he throws a little bit of low kicks. He does a lot of boxing up top. He's got some decent ground game and grappling skills, but it's just not what he's going to hang his hat on. Dustin Stoltzfus, he's a little bit more on the kickboxing side, and I think coming into this fight, I just don't like the accumulation of damage that Dustin Stoltzfus has taken in his career thus far. You take a look at his losses. He's went to decision, but he's also been submitted a number of times, which means that he does leave himself open and overextend. He's not that great on the ground, where I think Punahele would actually have a size and an overall skill advantage. If it does go to the feet, he was knocked out by Abus Magomedov, who is a good kickboxer in his own right. So I think Dustin Stoltzfus, on the feet might have a slight advantage, but Punahele Soriano, obviously, being, Hawaiian, he did get knocked out by Roman Kopylov, but Roman Kopylov can land some clean head kicks and elbows that I don't think Dustin Stoltzfus is going to be quite the same threat of landing. So I think in that sense, Punahele is going to be really hard to crack that jaw. Again, he is a Samoan guy. I don't like Dustin Stoltzfus' chances of doing that, and I think Punahele Soriano, his accumulation of damage, the boxing, the low leg kicks is going to stabilize Dustin. And worst case scenario, if it does go to the ground, Pule has the size and probably the advantage to get a rear naked choke or some other sort of submission, or at least control it on the ground. So I like Punahele Soriano in most areas. That justifies the minus 285 coming back. So I'm with Puna. What about you?
That's hard to follow up, but yeah, I'm with Punahele Soriano as well. Dustin Stoltzfus, like you said, he's accumulated a lot of damage recently. He's been getting finished a lot recently. I do remember saying that Punahele Soriano, if he catches a guy right, like he's good at hitting that off button every now and then. And I forgive a loss against Roman Kopylov. Roman Kopylov is killing everyone right now, like literally murdering motherfuckers. Leaving them needing an oxygen tank like it's a glory knockout. So I forgive a loss against Roman Kopylov. I think Dustin Stoltzfus is potentially on his way out. I'm sick of saying his last name. This might be the last time that we have to. He had a win, right? 4-1 over his last 5, or 1-4 actually. Maybe that that one win helps him stick around a little bit longer. But as we see these new guys coming into the UFC, the middleweight division is improving. It's needed improvement for a little bit. As it's improving, guys like Dustin Stoltzfus are phasing out. So I'm definitely rolling with Punahele Soriano this week. Good pick.
All right, moving up the card, a fantastic freaking fight here, dude. Sean Brady taking on Kelvin Gastelum at 170 pounds. This is going to be a good one. I think Kelvin Gastelum is going to be a little bit undersized here, but I mean, he's coming in at 170 after most recently fighting at 185. And I think correct me if I'm wrong, I think this is going to be, us seeing him at 170, a weight class that we all thought he probably deserved to be at given his frame and how much kind of just like excess fat that he would carry from fight to fight at 85, at 170, but dropping down there for the first time at 32. It's going to be really interesting. And that's, I think, what justifies this plus 100 mark for him. It's just so we don't know. Sean Brady in his most recent fight against Bilal Muhammad, he did lose. It was back and forth. I think Bilal was probably getting some of the better exchanges. I do remember the finish being a little bit early, but it wasn't necessarily unjustified because Bilal was getting some of the better exchanges. And, to never to compliment Bilal, but he does have a strong grappling game. And a couple of punches here and there. He lands not strong, but he does land in volume occasionally. He accumulates them. I feel like Bilal, I don't feel like he lands a lot of punches in the moment, but you go back and you look at the scorecard and he landed, 15 to 20 per round. Like, where did these come from? Whether they're actually significant shots or not, they were enough accumulation to get Sean Brady out of there, quick stoppage or not. With that being said, I just feel like Sean Brady has a lot more power and a lot more speed. Kelvin Gastelum is probably has the fight IQ advantage, but with him, being now dropping down to 170 for the first time, I think he's still going to give up some size here to Sean Brady, but he's not. He's used to giving up size. He is 18-8, and he's been kind of iffy at 185. A lot of it might have to do with the reach issue. So it's just really hard to pick this one because it's so much more in the ballpark for Kelvin Gastelum, and he's proved us wrong when he's been mismatched. That now that he's probably matched up with guys who are more in line with him, like I think Kelvin Gastelum could probably do some damage at 55, depending on how he looks here at 70. He's 5'9", 71 and a half inch reach. He would have some real size against guys at 55 and match up with them. I mean, listen, he's probably about Dustin Poirier size. So, be really interested to see what he does here. I think Sean Brady carries more muscle, which could help him in the wrestling situations. And I think of Sean Brady as being a young kid and Kelvin Gastelum as being older. But the reality is they're 1 year apart, and Kelvin Gastelum has a world of a different experience. But here's the thing: guys at 85 are not as skilled as guys at 170. And because it's a new weight class for Kelvin Gastelum, I'm going to go ahead and actually give the edge to Sean Brady. He is minus 125 here, but he's basically home field advantage considering it's his weight class. So he knows what it feels like. He's been out for a little bit of time, and I'm sure he wants to get a little bit of that revenge and that momentum back after losing it to Bilal Muhammad a year ago. So he's had that time out. He's had time to recover. He's had a good chin historically. That was his first loss. He's from a Long Island guy. So, Renzo Gracie out there in Philly, I like his demeanor a lot. I'm going to go with Sean Brady because, he's used to the weight. He's going to have extra size, probably cancel each other's grappling out. And I think he lands the more powerful punches, but it's a fantastic fight.
Yeah, I like the point that you made about their grappling canceling each other out. I think that that's the case. You saw Sean Brady and Bilal Muhammad tentative to try and go to the ground with each other. You can't forget Kelvin Gastelum made his name as a wrestler. But the power in his hands, like he looked like a world breaker in his last fight. Who wasn't that he fought the last time around?
Chris Curtis?
Chris Curtis, yes. He looked like a world breaker against Chris Curtis. The two of those guys were going to war with each other. That was an all-time fight, in my opinion. And he ate everything that Chris Curtis had for him. And Chris Curtis is no slouch. Chris Curtis isn't the most defensive guy. But, they were throwing shots at each other. I think Kelvin Gastelum is just as good as Sean Brady on the ground. Dropping down to 170, even though he's a little bit older, it's such a smart career move for him right now. We've always been saying that he should fight at 170 because it really was the reach mismatch that gave him the disadvantage in a lot of his fights. And he looked a little bit hefty fighting at 185. He had a little bit of a gut to him, especially that last time around against Chris Curtis. He had a little bit of a gut to him, and that made me uneasy about him going into that fight. But he still looked like a fucking animal. So take that extra fat off, lean out. It's been a while since that Chris Curtis fight. Pretty much right after that, he did say that he wanted to go down to 170. I think that 185 fight against Chris Curtis was more of a test to be like, do I still have it? Great size matchup for him. And now he gets to drop down and fight at a weight class where he's more apt and the matchups are more even. The playing field is more even.
Agreed.
So I expect him to get in there and really just put the pause on Sean Brady on Saturday. I think he's just gonna work with his hands, and it's gonna be a big striking battle. And Kelvin Gastelum is gonna have more power to him. He's more creative with the striking. He attacks the body a little bit more often
Mhm.
and causes his opponents to drop their hands. And he has powerful body shots and body hooks. Like him and Chris Curtis are going to work on the body with each other. But I think he's going to force Sean Brady to drop his hands at one point and just knock him out. He's going to drop his hands, and Kelvin Gastelum's going to find the chin. If he doesn't knock him out, he's going to wobble him and have him pretty hurt throughout the fight. But I think ultimately Kelvin Gastelum puts the pause on him and finishes this one. And at plus money, I'm definitely willing to throw in Kelvin Gastelum. So that's my pick here.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how the line moves, see, what Kelvin looks like coming into this fight. Again, I believe this is the first time we're going to see him at his, more true weight class of 170, where he's going to, not have that disadvantage where he's giving it up. And yeah, he actually absolutely has had fantastic footwork and, intuitiveness and just kind of flow state sometimes just popping that and working that body. But I think, again, it's going to be really interesting because we've always said 170 has a lot more skill than 85. That's why guys who are big for 170 go up and have immediate success at 85. Same thing with 205. It kind of just feels like the heavier you get, the less skilled you are. And I think there's a gap there. So it'll be interesting to see, Kevin Gastelum up against a little bit more of skilled strikers. But again, I don't know if Sean Brady is the best that 170 has to have.
No.
It's an interesting fight. It's an intriguing fight for a variety of different reasons. He does have a strong chin, and Kevin Gastelum does a lot of body work. Sean Brady's incredibly durable to the body and incredibly tough too, to be able to get through some of those. We'll see, man. It'll be really interesting. I think you make a lot of really good points that actually do maybe sway me in the corner of Kelvin Gastelum.
Yeah, I mean, I think him. We're going to see it with the next fight, but the weight class movement's smart.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's it's going to be one of those things where it's like, oh, fucking finally, Kelvin Gastelum, because he can't compete with the long, lanky guys of
Mm-hmm.
85. Not even that they're lanky, just that reach is so different, and it made it difficult for him. But he was so good at closing the distance against those types of guys. Imagine what he's going to do against 170 guys that are
Right, where he doesn't have to close the distance.
yeah, bro. He's going to get in on Sean Brady fast.
Mm-hmm. I can see it. I definitely can see it. We've been saying he should go to 170 for a long time, and now that he does it, the first thing I do is I knock him. Like, no, the only thing is that it's just the unknown. And the new skill matchup. We're going to be interested to see. I think he's primed to really look good. Sean Brady's a tough matchup for him. Sean Brady's a really good fighter, really well-rounded, talented guy with a lot of power, a lot of speed. I thought he had more youth on his side than he actually ends up having. But regardless of the fact, it's going to be a great fight. Speaking of great fights, this main card is flooded with them. And speaking of guys who move up, move weight classes later on in their career, Deiveson Figueiredo in the 135-pound weight class for the first time, taking on Rob Font, who has been in the 135-pound his entire career. He's going to have a 3 to 4 inch height advantage, a 3 to 4 inch reach advantage. Rob Font, obviously, good anti-wrestling and really, really strong boxing, good head movement, good defense, amazing toughness. You got to watch out for the jab, got to watch out for the two and the hooks coming back, that in-close, dirty boxing. Rob Font is a guy who's going to get in there. He'll use his kicks a little bit, kind of keep you steady, keep you immobile. But he's going to be who's going to want to stand up with you. 2-3 over his last 5. Let's take a look at who he fought there. Cody Garbrandt, he beat by decision. Jose Aldo, he lost by decision. He lost to Marlon Chito Vera by decision. He has a win over Adrian Yanez with TKO, and then he lost to Corey Sandhagen by decision. When I say durable, I mean absolutely freaking durable this guy is. The list of killers that he's been in there with and he's contended with. Sometimes he's gotten absolutely pieced up on the face and showing every bit of that. He's been in there. He's taken everything they have to give, and he's given some back, and he's never said die in there. Talking about Davison Figueiredo, another guy who went back and forth, been in some wars, top level competition at 125 pounds. Now, granted, Brandon Moreno was probably a little bit faster than Rob Font, not a ton. Rob Font's going to probably pack a little bit more of a punch than Davison Figueiredo on the basis that he's just got a bigger frame there. He's better on the feet, not as good on the ground, but I think he will be, because of the size and because of just his overall skill and ability, I think Rob Font will be able to handle his own on the ground against Davison Figueiredo. I think he's going to be a lot bigger than him, and I think his striking is really going to be where he gets to. Now, Davison Figueiredo, he's going to try and use those kicks and try and use that creative striking to get the better of Rob Font, but I just don't think he's going to be able to show anything to Rob Font that he's not used to. And then jumping up in size, 10 pounds when you go from 25 to 35 is actually a really, really big difference. Now, Figueiredo may be a lot better because he is less dehydrated. He doesn't have to put his body through the same amount of things in order to get to the 135 pound weight barrier. But I just think I'm leaning Rob Font here. He's more experienced in the weight class. I think he's going to have a lot of size. I mean, 3 inches, 5'5" to 5'8". We've seen Volk be able to contend with that kind of size disadvantage, but not everybody is Volk, and especially not at 35, 36 years old after the wars Davison Figueiredo had been in. I'm not saying he's going to go out there and get knocked out, but I think Rob Font is, deadly accurate. I think he poses a lot of volume. It's only 3 rounds and he gets out there quick. So I think Davison Figueiredo would be able to showcase what an increase of stamina he may have. Where, if it was a 5-round fight and he was at 35, I think it would be a lot better for him. Because he can show what he can really do when he doesn't have to, conserve his energy because he just put his body through hell. So I think because it's the 3 rounds, I think you're going to see Rob Font go out there. You're going to see a lot of kicks early on from Figueiredo, but I think Font's going to just keep inching forward. Figueiredo's going to have to be forced backward to try and keep that range. And because Font's going to get in real close, I think that's, what he's going to end up playing to. He's going to have a reach advantage and he's going to be trying and playing up close. I think it takes away a lot of what Davison Figueiredo is going to try and do. He's going to be on the back foot, size disadvantage. He's not going to necessarily even have that much of a speed advantage. It's interesting to see what he's going to look like. I'm going with Rob Font in this one.
Yeah, I'm so with you on that. And just to avoid repeating everything that you just said, because you hit the nail right on that, in my opinion, something else we have to pay attention to is you look at Brandon Moreno, right? Like, these 2 guys, Davison Figueiredo and Brandon Moreno, only fought each other over their past 4 fights. And that's a significant amount of time to be fighting the same guy. Like, that was over the course of, 2.5 years, basically.
Right.
Brandon Moreno did fight Kai France in there, but Kai France, similar size, stature to Davison Figueiredo, and the striking was a little bit similar as well. But you look at what Alejandro Pantoja did to Brandon Moreno. It's fresh blood now after a while, and it's a new puzzle to figure out, and it's a new guy to train for. And, understandably, it's tough to adapt to somebody new when you're used to seeing the same thing over 2.5 years. I'm expecting Davison Figueiredo to be in a similar predicament. Rob Font is a totally different animal to Brandon Moreno. In terms of size, the way that he fights, like you mentioned, the dirty boxing, getting in close, the damage that he can absorb. We've seen him get fucking turned to mincemeat by guys like Chito Vera, who tore him apart with elbows out of side control and just turned him into mincemeat. Davison Figueiredo is not going to do that. And when Rob Font's the aggressor, he's a lot more successful. Guys like Chito Vera. Figueiredo is not a Chito Vera, Corey Sandhagen type of guy that can take Rob Font to the ground, control him, sit back, counterpunch. And Rob Font's going to be able to fight his fight against Figueiredo. It's a good introduction for Davison Figueiredo to the bantamweight division. It certainly is, because Rob Font is no slouch. Despite being 2-3 over his last 5, he's been in there with some great names. And I really like him to get the win this week. I think it's as close as a lock as we're going to get on this card. So, of value. I like Rob Font here a lot.
Okay. I wasn't expecting the lock point, but very interesting. I don't know, man. I mean, I never want to count out a former champion, even at a advanced age in a new weight class. Um, I'm interested to see this fight. I think this is a lot of sneaky good, like you said, like deep cut matchups for UFC fans.
Well, speaking of deep cut, I think that this is going to be a very bloody battle. I think that this is going to be, it's going to leave the octagon red for the next two guys that are stepping in.
I could see that. Both of them a lot of scar tissue. They both fight, with either awkward shots coming from awkward angles, a lot of elbows, like you said, inside dirty boxing. So all of the making of a bloody one, minus no chance for razor blades. But now they're with the WWE. You never know. Maybe freaking Herb Dean goes, let me see that cut over there, buddy.
Yeah. Now it's gonna be a nasty 3-round fight though. So they're gonna have to clean up the octagon before Jalen Turner and Bobby Green step inside.
Yeah, seriously, some add like a little hydrophobic covering or something to easily wipe away the blood.
Yeah,
I don't know.
it's
It's
gonna be
not stained on that canvas. Canvas is already slippery as is.
yeah. But just to touch on this fight, I am rolling with Bobby Green here against Jalen Turner. And while Jalen Turner has a 4-inch reach advantage, he's significantly taller. I like Bobby Green this week, and one of the main reasons just being that Jalen Turner took this one on short notice after Dan Hooker had to bow out due to injury. Jalen Turner is a guy that it appears that he sort of struggles to make 155 to begin with, and now coming in on short notice and taking the fight, I believe it was like 9 days notice or something like that. Jalen Turner is going to have a really rough weight cut if he makes it. I'd imagine he will, because he's one of these guys that's floating towards the upper echelon of like the lightweight division right now and trying to break his way in there. A win against Bobby Green, we have seen. It elevates guys. There's a lot of guys that have gotten title shots off of a win against Bobby Green. But Bobby Green has the experience. He's been training for this fight for a while, training for a long, lanky guy in Dan Hooker, who, has a similar frame and body build to Jalen Turner. Not unlike Styles, likes to, stay at range, pop off jabs, pop off those teep kicks to the body every now and then when he chooses to, get in there close and engage. So Bobby Green was training for somebody similar. And Bobby Green right now in his career, we're kind of seeing a little bit of a resurgence. And he's been rolling a bit. I don't know if we'll ever see him get a title shot, but he's becoming the ultimate gatekeeper for the lightweight division. It's a massive test for Jalen Turner. I just think the short notice is going to affect a guy like Jalen Turner, who struggles to make weight quite a bit. And he's not too dissimilar in fighting style and stature from Dan Hooker. So I'm rolling with Bobby Green. The head movement's going to be on point. That hood fighting style, it tends to work for him. Like, this is going to be a fun striking battle, and a lot of times Bobby Green comes out on top. One thing you got to watch out for, too, Bobby Green is good at touching guys' chins with, like, a close uppercut, and just nasty boxing combinations. So a guy like Jalen Turner, who's going to struggle with the weight cut, he's going to be massively dehydrated, as we know. Being dehydrated affects your chin. And that combination of factors, I'm not saying Bobby Green's going to knock Jalen Turner out or anything, but he might touch him up there and cause a little bit of damage and wobble him a couple of times and turn the judges' scorecards in his favor. So I'm rolling with Bobby Green against Jalen Turner this week. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, one thing I wanted to point out to you, Jalen Turner's 6'3", and Dan Hooker is 6 foot. They have the exact same reach, 75.5-inch reach, according to Tapology. So something interesting there to think about, especially as you compared who Bobby Green was training for versus obviously now who he has. I think the difference is Dan Hooker is a little bit more of a typical boxer. He's throwing ones and twos from a more traditional angle. He may stay out here, have a little bit more move, a little bit more of that city kickboxing influence to him, but I think he's throwing traditional punches, whereas Jalen Turner, and it's so odd to think about Jalen Turner having such a long reach. I think a lot of his height ends up actually being in the lower half and with his kicks, which that's what makes his body seem so weird and tarantula-like, honestly, is because of his long legs. So I think the kicking distance is going to be a huge disadvantage or a huge change-up for Bobby Green, because he was expecting more of a hook, based, a boxing traditional style of matchup. And then now he's going to fight a guy who's just as long, but he has odder angles to deal with of those long punches, but he also now has even longer kicks to contend with and more active kicks. I think that's going to be the problem. Jalen Turner, he possesses, those long limbs that get you from opposite weird angles, especially, upward, upper hooks kind of things. But he's also, you got to remember, he's got that wicked question mark kick. He's got low kicks. He's got body kicks, push kicks, teep kicks. So a lot of things to deal with. And I think that having to deal with both of those things is going to be a lot for Bobby King at 37. Bobby King. Look, for King Green, as he wants to be called King, I think that's going to be a lot for King. You have a 28-year-old versus a 37-year-old. The biggest difference is Dan Hooker is 33. So guys at different points in their career. Jalen Turner is only getting better, and Jalen Turner, he fought tooth and nail with Dan Hooker. Dan Hooker did edge out the victory there, but I think Dan Hooker, Bobby Green would have been a really close matchup in which I would have edged it to Dan Hooker. So Jalen Turner, knowing that he's on the same relative skill level, striking wise, as Dan Hooker, kind of makes me a little bit more confirmed in that. And plus Jalen Turner, I think he's 2 losses in. I think he's really eager to get rid of those. I think he sees a good matchup between an aging guy who I think we've seen the fastest version of Bobby Green. So I think, Jalen Turner's coming in as seeing a guy who is going to now have to contend with something that he wasn't expecting to have to contend with. And he's a little bit older, and he's had a lot of accumulation of damage. That should even out the difference in momentum here. I'm actually going with Jalen Turner. I don't see what the odds are. I imagine he'll probably, although I want to give the caveat that it depends on how that weight cut goes for him. Like you said, 1 week, 10 days notice, for such a big guy, 163. I don't know what he walks around at, but he last weighed in at 158. I think he missed weight for that Dan Hooker fight, so it's going to be interesting to see how he manages to do it here. They say it's at 155 still. I wouldn't be surprised if they end up doing like a catch weight 160, 165. Bobby Green just wants to fight, that. So I mean, he's fought 3 times. He will have fought 3 times in the last 3 months, 3.5 months. So freaking awesome activity from him. That's another thing to worry about, though. I mean, listen, he had the fight 6 months ago with Jared Gordon where they had the clash of heads. 3 months later, he's in there. He wasn't the one who got knocked out, but he did, hit his head and get a couple shots. He didn't get too much damage from Tony Ferguson. A month, and a half later, he was in there against Grant Dawson, which he got the knockout there. So a lot of activity here. So it'll be interesting to see, how that affects him too.
Early knockout though against Grant Dawson. That's something.
Yeah, and he didn't get hit a ton by Tony Ferguson either. So he's had good health, but I just going through those fight camps over and over and over again. Activity is good, but to what extent?
I genuinely feel confident in him, bro. Jalen Turner missed weight against Dan Hooker. He's not going to make weight against Bobby Green. He's going to drain himself, I think, and it's going to be a tragic weight cut, and we're going to see a drain Jalen Turner. Unless he goes in there with a Hamzat approach and is just like, I don't give a fuck. I kill everyone,
A Paulo Costa approach.
Yeah, it just doesn't even try to cut the weight. They're 7 glasses of wine deep or something. Anyway, it's main event time. We got Beneil Dariush versus Arman Tsarukyan. And this is a tough one in my opinion because, I am a Beneil Dariush fan. I'm a huge fan of the guy. I was pulling for Charles against Benny. But I think, we saw Beneil Dariush go on such a run against such high caliber competition. We saw him his last couple of fights. Sure, he had the loss against Charles. He did look good against Charles. He had flashes in that fight where he looked good on the ground against him. And then a win against Mateusz Gamrot, which is a great win because, Mateusz is practically undefeated at 21-1. He's an ADCC champion in grappling. And Beneil Dariush also touts his grappling as well. And that's mainly how he beat him. But the striking looked great in that fight as well. That was a fun, flowy fight, him and Mateusz. And then a great win against Tony Ferguson. Prior to that, Diego Ferreira, Scott Holtzman. Arman Tsarukyan, he's working his way up. Joaquim Silva, Damir Ismagulov, good win. A loss to Mateusz Gamrot, Joel Alvarez. Anyways, I like Beneil. See, I'm thinking about it. I like Beneil Dariush. I was going into this initially going to pick Arman Tsarukyan because Arman's the younger guy at 27 as opposed to 34. He looks a little bit quicker. He's got a little bit more snap to his strikes. But Beneil Dariush, we can't count him out. He only has that recently. He only has that loss to Charles, and he really didn't look bad coming off of an injury, I believe Beneil Dariush was as well. Um, or at least after it might have been between that and Mateusz Gamrot. And Charles is also Charles, man. Like Charles is a step above. I don't think Armin Sarukian's there just yet. I don't think that we can count Beneil Dariush out after one loss to Charles Oliveira. Um, the grappling is there, the striking is there. He's so crisp. He's not like flashy in any sort of way, but he just tends to catch guys, and he's so flowy with his grappling. So I have to go Beneil Dariush this week against Armin Sarukian. I think Armin Sarukian's a little bit untested, and Beneil Dariush, like, if he doesn't get the win this week, then it'll always have been a what if scenario, right? Because Beneil Dariush was so close to a title shot so many times and was denied that. And he needs this win against Armin Tsarukyan. I don't think it's Armin Tsarukyan's time yet. I think a loss to Beneil Dariush is a great learning experience for a kid like this. And Beneil Dariush needs this win to get himself back into like title talks. So really hoping, and I'm pulling for Benny at plus money this week. I'm really hoping for a Beneil Dariush win. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, I'm pretty torn, just like you. I mean, you have Arman Tsarukyan, 27 years old. He's going to be have the greater propensity to improve from fight to fight. And you have Beneil Dariush, 34 years old, exiting his prime, likely has the greater propensity to look worse from fight to fight here. Now Beneil Dariush, the fight against Mateusz Gamrot, back and forth, but he had won that pretty solidly. And then when you look at the fight with Mateusz Gamrot, which didn't go Arman Tsarukyan's way, that was back and forth too, and actually could have went his way. I think I had it going his way, if I remember correctly. And then back and forth fight with Damir Ismagulov, where it ended up going his way, but I think I actually had it Damir's way. So you could say that I have a bias against Arman Tsarukyan all you want, but I think that he is a really, really strong up-and-coming prospect, strong grappling, average to a little bit above average striking. His strength is obviously going to be in the grappling, in the ground and pound, the control. He's a wide-body individual. He has good takedowns, good clinch game. His finishing ability against lower level competition is obviously there, but as you get to higher level competition, it wanes a bit. And then you have Joachim Swivel, in which case he was able to get the finish. I don't think he's going to be able to have his way grappling with Benny Dariush, which is what he really needs in order to get these victories. Again, Damir Ismagulov was a win, but it could have went either way. I think this one is going to be able to go either way also. The big difference maker for me, at least based off of what we have seen thus far, is the end of the fight, in which case, that's where Mateusz Gamrot was having some of his greater success down the line. I think Arman Tsarukyan came out with a strong opening round, in which case Beneil is used to that. He's used to guys going out there and trying to overpower him because of his look and his approach to the game. So I think Beneil is going to be able to withstand that early takedown. And, he started to beat Mateusz Gamrot later into the fight as Mateusz waned. I think Mateusz and Arman was so close because they both waned. I think Benny Dariush is going to have the ability, at least historically he has, to keep up that grappling and find his success later in the fight. You got to remember the back and forth fight that he had, where he ended up being the winner. And what really put him on the map was his win over Drakkar Klose, where he knocked him out with an overhand left after, going back and forth, showing off his ability to be durable. But mostly it was a minute left, I think, in the second round. So, he went a long time going back and forth there. So Benny Dariush, good durability, good cardio, even at 34 years old. Plenty of guys at 155 can still get it done at 34. Looking at you, Connor, at 35 or 36. So, Beneil Dariush, I think, is going to be able to get this one done. But a good fight nonetheless, and a really, really good test for Arman Tsarukyan to see where he is relative to the rest of the division.
Yeah, I really hope Beneil pulls it off. All right, you want to jump into our pick rundown?
Let's do it.
By way of prelim notable, I got one. I'm going with Rodolfo Bellato over Ihor Potieria. That's just a nice little parlay piece. And then when it comes to the main card, I'm going with Nelly Soriano over Dustin Stoltzfus, Kelvin Gastelum over Sean Brady, Rob Font over Davison Figueiredo, Bobby Green over Jalen Turner, and Beneil Dariush over Armin Tsarukyan.
All right. I am going to be taking Rodolfo Bellato as well over Ihor Potieria. Also, I think Drakkar Klose is going to be able to get it done over Joe Solecki on the prelims. Also, Julia Avila is going to get it done, I think, over an aging Miesha Tate. So 3 prelim notables for you there. As we're going through it, I think Punahele Soriano is going to get it done over Dustin Stoltzfus. Either way, Sean Brady, Kelvin Gastelum. I'm actually going to say that one's going to go the distance. I think that's the safest bet there. I'm actually kind of leaning to Kelvin Gastelum. You gave me a lot to think about, and you made a really good point there, Keith. So I'm going to be going Kelvin Gastelum ever so slightly. Rob Font, going with Rob Font against Davison Figueiredo. I think he's going to be bigger, just more used to the division. And Davison Figueiredo is really aging, especially for a guy who's on the smaller side of things, 125 going to 135. Jalen Turner, I think, is going to oppose a way more dynamic of a striker against Bobby Green. He's going to mix it up really well. Bobby obviously is able to take it on. He's got a high fight IQ, but I think the size, speed, youth, and just quirkiness of Jalen Turner is going to be able to secure a victory there, probably 2-1, I would say. And Beneil Dariush, I think, is going to get the victory over Arman Tsarukyan, rounds 3, 4, and 5, if I had to guess.
Right. Nice, man. I like the picks. Good episode. Sorry you missed the first half an hour of the Raiders game.
No, they're up 7-0, but I saw they were in the red zone again, and now I see the Chiefs have the ball. So something bad happened.
Yeah, probably. Typical. All right, well, enjoy the rest of the game. Hopefully they pull out with a dub against, the Super Bowl defending champions. Anyways, enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Everyone that stuck around with us for the episode, enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Enjoy the rest of your week. And let us know if you tell any of our picks over on Twitter, Instagram. You listen to us on Spotify. Please like, comment, subscribe. Do all that good stuff for us. It helps us out a lot. All righty. Thanks, Tom. Have a good one, brother.
Take it easy, guys.